Yeah, those electrolytes, man.
Yeah, it helps me with the acid reflux because it
Cause,
keeps my
cause
mouth
just
wet.
water, like just water, can also like um take
Water also
away.
helps. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Welcome, people, to this author Q&A with Anatalia Vallez, and that's how you pronounce it, right? Vallez.
Vallez,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. And yeah, this is like the first author Q&A that we're doing this year, and the one I'm moderating. There will be an author Q&A every Saturday this month for National Poetry Month with a different poet. I think next week we'll have Sana Joshi, and it is also Earth Day, and she's actually a climate justice activist as well. So it like we weren't even planning on it that way, but
Mm.
it somehow coincided with Earth Day. And then the 29th, I think we have Mariana Franco coming, and she's also a poet as well. And then today we have the Anatalia Vallez, the author of The Most Spectacular Mistake, her debut book, uh, published by Flower Song Press. Welcome, Anatalia.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for being here.
yeah.
And yeah.
And you are what I call multi-creative or multi-passionate, and so because you also are an actor, and you even sing a little bit, like, when you do your poems,
Hmm.
and then you just wrote a play as well, Las Arenas.
Hmm.
So we can talk about the book, but while we wait for your parents to come as well, like let's talk about the play first, like what inspired that and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting how I call myself a writer, actor, and creative alchemist because the idea of like transforming whatever life throws at me, whether it's like good, bad, negative, neutral, and turning it into something else has always been how I've like been able to navigate life. And so I went through a lot in my undergrad years, and I feel like I lost my voice in trying to do a lot of social justice work. And that led to a toxic environment, um, a toxic relationship with myself, to the point where I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror. And I'd never really struggled with that, but I'd seen people in my family and family members of mine struggle with that. And so I started writing very viscerally about my experience going through that like relationship and trying to find myself again. And I did it through theater, through Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble, which is the only Latina theater in Orange County, and who was really critical to me finding my voice as an actor. And so coming back after going through my undergrad career and writing very cathartically, writing about my experience, it was home and it was more triggering than helpful at the time. So I said, this was just for me. It's okay. No one ever has to see this. And I put it away. And I started doing more poetry and other things. I was like teaching and doing other stuff. And then I dreamt of a mermaid, and this Chicana mermaid came to me through a dream and was telling me, well, what about my story? Like, what about my life? And I woke up and I was like, that's exactly what this play needs. Like, this play needs like something ethereal and fantastic, um, as a mermaid. And what happens when I give voice to an icon or a character that has never been actually given the voice to speak her story, and her journey as a mermaid. And so in Spanish, las sirenas means the mermaids, but it also, sirena is also a siren. And so I use that metaphor, I use that to talk about the signs of a toxic relationship. I use that about talking about police violence, um, and about the mermaids too. And so this play, which I had now grown into something that wasn't just my story inserted in there, but it would like actually had like these characters that were different than, inspired by my life, but now this own world and its own thing. Um, and through the master's program that I was doing at Cal State LA, I was able to use that as a vehicle to get funding and to produce this play. So that's what I did in December as my culminating thesis project. And it was very, very intense. And because it was so close to my heart, it was hard to like not take things personally because it's so close to home. And I've also learned a lot about letting things go, and how something that started as so personal for me became something that other people that I never met could identify with and could resonate with and could feel inspired. Because I do name a lot of Chicanas from the walkouts, the LA walkouts in the 70s, who organized in LA, who walked out of their classrooms at like 16, 17, 18, even younger, organizing other students and peers because they were being discriminated against, uh, and they were not getting the opportunity to even think about going to college. And no, so now fast forward to the education that I've had and the ability for me to study my own history, paying homage to that. I use that idea of the mermaids, right? Like that we find each other, um, and we connect intergenerationally. And that always gives me strength. I think that's been a big theme of this book too, is when I remember my roots, when I learn about my roots and where I come from, I feel much stronger in who I am, and I feel a strength to whatever I want to create in the future. That if I didn't have that connection to my roots, I don't think I would feel like I had a voice, honestly. And I talk about that a lot in my work and in this book.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a good segue into the book itself because we were talking about roots, and this book has a unique structure. It starts with roots, right, and then it goes into other other parts of the body. So can you explain that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the book, and it's in four parts. There's a poem at the end, and it talks about all four parts, from the roots to the core to the heart to the head. And I use that like nature symbolism a lot, because I do feel like we're kind of like plants, but just like with human, lots more feelings than plants. Uh, but that we need that nourishment from our roots, from our core, which I sort of identify as kind of the fire, the fire in your belly. Um, Sometimes we feel like we're really overactivating like that fire, and sometimes we're like underappreciating that fire. So we like balancing that. And then the heart and the head, which in a lot of in Nawal and like a lot of indigenous communities, the head is sort of like the spirit, like it's like the integration of everything. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what how I piece. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really like interesting because in a lot of
feel your feelings.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I have a T-shirt that says "Feel your feelings, it's okay."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just did a workshop. The Santa Ana Unified School District's Ethnic Studies Conference is today, and I did a workshop with designed for students, like K through 12 students, um, called "No Feeling is Final."
Hmm.
And we talk about the difference between like emotions and feelings.
Hmm.
That one is like more in the mind, and the other one is in the body. And
Hmm.
because I have like I have the privilege of like having done theater and taken some dance classes and like had that um, embodiment experience. I think it's so important that we are able to connect with our bodies because we have like this is our the only real home that we have in this life as humans is our body. And if we start creating a kinder connection to our body that's more about curiosity than it is about judgment,
Hmm.
um, we just have a better time as a human being, you
Hmm.
know, because we can't get rid of our body. It's just here along with on the ride for us. um,
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah. So the owner Sam tells me that this book, at least here, sells out every time they get copies.
Yeah.
So I think that's saying a lot, and it speaks to the depth of I think the depth you went in the journey of writing this book, right? So like what was that journey like, and what was your process when you were trying to finish this book? Because there's a difference between your process when you try to finish one poem, which itself can take a lot,
Yeah.
but to finish a whole body of work, it's a lot. It's an accomplishment. So how did you do it?
I think it's definitely a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there were a lot of women in my family and mentors of mine that were writers and that like are theater makers that they spent their whole lives wanting to be seen and working really hard to and to be in spaces where they can support students and people like me that were just growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was a lot easier for me because of them. I think if they hadn't gone through the struggles that they went through, it would have been a lot harder for me, or it would have just been completely not possible for me to do this. Um, this book was started through like an MFA. Well, it wasn't started. I'd been collecting poems for a long time, but I actually started putting things together through a DIY MFA program that Sarah Rafael Garcia started with me because I told her I wanted to get back into poetry, but I just needed a little bit of structure. And I've heard this a lot, and I don't know how you feel about this, but like I've heard freedom. There's freedom in structure,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was really helpful for me because I am very I can be very floaty, and the ideas can like exist very like cool in my mind, but then when it actually goes down to like editing and sorting through things and like, oh, you got to do all the organizing and all that stuff, that it can be very daunting. And so to have someone there to support me through the process and to be that mentor, to be like, are you writing, are you editing, this and that, and to not be afraid of uh, saying uncomfortable things. You know, there are some things in here, like there are swear words in here. There are poems just in Spanish that I didn't want to translate into English because I wanted to honor the language that it was so hard for me to hold on to. Um, in a like growing up in Orange County, it was really, really hard for me to feel pride in speaking Spanish because all through K through 12 I was told not to speak Spanish in school. And if it weren't for my brother who like insisted that I keep up my Spanish, my parents were too busy, to try to teach me all the language. And so I was losing that part of myself. If I had lost my Spanish, I wouldn't be able to find a way to communicate with my grandparents today. And it's something as simple as that, as language. When you lose that language, that connection, it's like you lose part of yourself. And I'm really grateful for the ability to speak Spanish and to understand Spanish, even though it is another colonizer language, because that's the language that I can connect with folks. And there's something about writing in a different language and realizing this piece just doesn't want to be translated. It just wouldn't make sense. And I that there is predominantly English, so if you read it, and speak English, you'll be able to understand like 90% of it. Um, there, but there is something about like refusing to be translated. Like I want like that idea that like not everything was made for English speakers is so like that is what my parents and my uncles and my family members whose first language is Spanish, that's how they felt coming into this country. Completely confused, completely ostracized, um, lost because of the language. And so I wanted to like dig into that a little bit. Like, how does it feel to not be to be able to hear something and not understand those words? That there are people that don't understand, and that are like made um, to bend to the will of the English language. Uh, so like little things like that I know that I pushed a lot of boundaries with this book. As cute and pink as it is, it actually says a lot of truth. It says a lot of things. Um, and so yeah, I mean there's like symbolism like all over the book. um, the cover, it has my friend John Jairo Valencia designed it. I just gave him my manuscript, which is kind of like the book when it's still like in a draft form. um, and I sent it to him and I was like, do whatever you want for the cover, like literally do anything you want. My grandma from my mom's side doesn't know how to read or write, and so the cover and the illustrations that are throughout the book were really important for me, because that is how my grandma was going to be able to interpret the book. And which made it much more important for me to share this book, that I had this opportunity, that Flower Song Press reached out to me and said, we read your manuscript, we're interested. We've never published, at the time it was a chapbook, which is something shorter than 60 pages is what's considered a chapbook. They said, we've never published a chapbook, but we're really interested in this book. um, are you interested in connecting with us? And I said yes. And then I and then I said, what does it take for it to be a book? And they said, how many more pages I needed. And I was like, okay, I got to keep writing, then I got to keep editing. And I think that impulsed me even more. um, and then it was December 2020 when we like made final edits on the actual content and on the cover, and we decided, okay, this is going to be the cover. And I was like, okay, sometime, I think I announced it on Instagram like in January of 2020. I was like, okay, this is coming out sometime, but like I could actually announce it to the world. And then the shutdown happened, pandemic happened, March. And then I got a call in late March, and they said, we're printing your book. And I was like, what do you mean there's a pandemic? Like, can you even go to the USPS? What are you talking about? And it was like this like thing where like I couldn't stop it anymore. Like, I can't say like, no, I'm not ready, I'm not emotionally prepared for this. How am I going to do like this, like a reading of it or anything like that? That was unthinkable at that time. um we were like fighting for our lives, like as a collective. It was very, very scary. And this book came out 3 years ago. This time in April of last year, or 3 years ago. And I felt very guilty. I felt very, very guilty that I was going to be celebrating something that I had worked so hard on at a time when there were people that were confronting huge repercussions, to the pandemic. But the more that I sat with that, and that's the thing about like recognizing your feelings and understanding like people needed that joy then more than ever. They needed that reminder of, oh, there's still life happening. Oh, there's still things moving. Oh, we could do a virtual event. We could do a virtual launch. We could do all these things. Um, and so, like my book, the books that I had like pre-orders, they sold out before I even got the books. Uh, so people were really like, they wanted to read. They wanted something that was like not just about the pandemic. Uh, and yeah, I mean, it's incredible that it's reached so many people, and that people that I never felt like would identify with something as personal as this book are able to take something out of it and able to connect it and inspire them to in whatever way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty inspiring. There's even a third language in the book, right? Nahal, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the indigenous language.
yeah. Now
Yeah,
what? So that's the
Nahal. Yeah.
language that my grandparents speak, and so I think that's also something that I wanted to integrate. I could read the the poem that's in those three languages.
Oh,
Um,
good. Yeah.
so it's called Pero me entendiste, which in English means but you understood what I said, which is something that my mom always says when we correct her on her English. She's like, but you understood what I said, right? So this says, my brother runs around covering the holes in our words. No se dice viniste, se dice veniste. You don't say, and then vinites is sort of it's a broken language. It's a broken way of saying veniste, which is to come. My sister excavates. ¿Cómo se dice te quiero mucho? Te makti nimotsneki. My grandma replies. Abuelita, ¿y cómo se dice abuelita? No colsi. Abuelita, ¿qué? Te makti nimotsneki no colsi. So, I love you so much, grandma. My grandpa only swears in Nahuatl. His favorite line in English is, "Gimme one beer." My uncle puts his English in a blender, sprinkles it in his tacos. My mom adds a few drops in her perfume. "Oh, really?" she replies to the Mexican taxi driver. I will forever be mocked for referring to a piece of bread by the brand La Tía Rosa. "La Tía Rosa no se vende, niña," the store owner said mockingly. I cried, my stomach still craving the mini buttered croissants. All I took home was shame for not speaking right, quote unquote. They say, speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. And I acknowledge. Our broken words, these collected, overflowing languages, are our shaking truths, refusing to be put to sleep.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's great. I think it's really important to preserve indigenous languages because it's more than just linguistics and communications. It's a way of um, encapsulating culture, like, and and the cultural stories and ideas and philosophy and even the science of it. So I was reading Fading Blue Grass by Walter Murray's Neighborhoods, and she was talking about how in one of the images, I think it's Tsunami, I'm not sure. She was saying that there is an origin story called Sky Woman, which by the way is the total opposite of like the Adam and Eve story, where the woman is the thief and all that, whereas here Sky Woman is literally the story of how Pearl Adam was created as well, right? And it's a story of how all the animals came together to help Sky Woman basically create the earth, right? People live with oneness, and what the woman is basically kind of the hero in the center of the story. And in that indigenous language, even the number is like one, two, three, four, five, right? Even the number is not just numbers, like each number indicates each step in the Skywalker story. So even when they say the numbers, it's a reminder built into the language of Skywalker story. So it's like this concept of oneness then becomes like just part of everyday life because you have to count all the time, right?
Wow. Yeah. Oh, there's so much meaning. I that's the whole studies. People study linguistics and like the where words like originate from, like
Mm-hmm.
in Nahuatl, where like things have like very different meanings and similar meanings. If you just say something slightly different, and even regionally, like the Nahuatl that I grew up listening to, and I try to converse with my grandparents, is very specific to the town we're from, because it's that specific. Where if you go to another town, it's maybe like a couple miles away or kilometers in there, and there's some that like it's gonna sound different. That's how different language is. Like that's how people mold their languages. Um, and I think we do here with accents too. Is like you can tell when people when someone's from some region or another because of the way that they speak, even though we may be speaking the same language, how we speak it regionally, can almost sound like
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You also and your family just got here, your
Yeah.
mom and your sister. Hi. So you also speak about how the love of your family and community
Yeah.
helped help you create this book and help you accomplish that life in general as well. And there is a beautiful poem, one of my favorites. So, by the way, on my copy, I have like annotated
I know you
everywhere.
do. You study the book. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
So there is yeah. In fact, let me get my copy.
Okay. I think I know which one you're talking about. Is it Papalos? Papalos in my backpack? Is it that one? Or which one?
That was pretty good too. So, okay, so annotated. So, so actually, it's Beauty in the is in the Eye of the Beloved.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. What page? What page
it's
is that?
48. This doesn't have the table of contents, right? Oh, it does.
It does,
Yeah,
but
but
we
there's
put
no page
numbers.
numbers. Yeah, but that's
Abstract.
why that's why
It's
I
a
love
whole. It's
these
it's its
because I
own
can just
poem.
do this. I have my own.
Okay, so this is Beauty is in the Eye of My Beloved. The Spanish coming out of the corners of my mouth are my parents peeking in to say good morning. The pelos on my arms and brows are my grandma protecting me from harsh sun rays. The twinkle in my brown eyes is my grandfather's smile. The brown skin you cringe at is my connection to the cosmos. And for every revolution around the sun, I can't help but grow unapologetically.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that's why I love poetry in general. Like there's stuff that's like unstated directly, but it's implied,
Yeah.
right? Like when you say, I think it's a very fine poem on some levels too. Like when you say, "The darkest statecraft is my passage to the cosmos," right? To me, that also speaks about colorism, and you speaking against colorism and being
Right.
defined against it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think that's what I love about poetry. It's like you don't have to say too much in a page,
Mm-hmm.
but for the right person, that poem can mean everything. You know, for
Mm-hmm.
someone that is struggling with their identity or with the way that they look or the way that they're being perceived or judged. Um, and the privilege of birthdays, you know, as I get older, I understand it's not just about the celebration of, oh, we get to party, we get to do this big thing, and but it's really like that honoring of um, another life, like another year of life that we get to have. I've lost a lot of people in my life, a lot of people younger than me, um, that I don't get to grow old with. And every year that I remember that I am getting older and I am becoming a future ancestor myself, that I carry this wisdom and that I can share something, contribute something to someone out there. Um, it just makes life a little bit more meaningful. I think it adds more value to my own life, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And your family's here, and you were talking about what they did for you before you came.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, should I read the poem first, or should I?
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So this is a poem that inspired, I guess, the title of the book. Uh, it's called "Breaking Patterns, Leaving Notes." The next time a man says "I love you," I want you to reply with so that's where the title of the book comes from. Claiming that I was very scared. There was a point in my life where I was very scared that taking care of myself was something bad, and that putting myself first was selfish, and somehow was the bad thing. And so that claim of, okay, if I'm gonna make that mistake, if I'm gonna put myself first, if I'm gonna choose a life where I don't have, where my immediate not for others, but in caring for myself, even the smallest things in my life, that's that I'm choosing. Like and so after ritual thing that I share here, there's like little self-care things that you could do for yourself, and I've done doses, And the support of my family. And I think that is the biggest thing. If you have community, a friend, a pet, someone that can support you in life, it just makes it a little bit easier. Because art is hard and life is hard. So when you have those people around you that are there, that are unconditionally supportive of you, that ask, "Can I help you?" Uh, I know it's hard sometimes to ask for help, but let people help you. I think that's a really big thing for me right now. Is like allowing people to help me, allowing people to hold me, allowing people to see me when I'm doing great and when I'm not, and that we don't have to feel good all the time to be deserving of love, to be deserving of care, to be deserving of support. And that's I think also the argument that I make, that like self-care is also community care. When you see that we are interconnected to one another, the fact that I can take care of myself means I can take care of the people that I love a little bit better. Um, yeah.
In fact, I think that's what the Papalos poem is about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has anyone heard of papalos? It's a very it's kind of like cilantro, and I know there's mixed feelings about cilantro, but papalos, it's even a more intense flavor than cilantro. But it's something regionally that I grew up eating, with like food, and it just adds another flavor to like beans or like eggs or whatever we're eating. So this is called papalos in my backpack, an ode to everything that didn't go to waste. The cement my uncle used to cover up a spot on the wall, the jeans that were cut to make my brother's clothes, the tortillas my mom took when she crossed the border, the eggshells my grandma uses to fertilize the soil, the discarded cardboard my grandpa recycles, the thrift clothes my sister tailors to her size, the books my brother finds and mends, the papalos in my backpack we ate for dinner, the laughter coming out of the gaps in our teeth, the tears we envelope in grief and send with an "I miss you," the rage in our questions, the questions in our rage, the pauses between our stories, your forgiveness, your unmatched socks, your single earring, your seamless confidence, your love, your laughter, your tears, your rage, your rage. Look around you. Chances are there is still something worth saving. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's talking about like what poetry does.
Hmm.
This is a whole conversation about like where I come from in my community. No one is disposable. Like that's just not a thing. Like even the people that um, we're just not disposable in a community. We have to work together in
Hmm.
some way or the other. um, and nothing is disposable.
Hmm.
Something can always be made out of scraps, out of details, out of other things. um, this DIY culture that we've kind of like
Hmm.
uh, branded it as is just how I've survived in
Hmm.
my life, and how I've seen, oh, we don't treat things like as disposable. And in this sense, like you just can't give up, because there's
Hmm.
always a way through it, right? There's always a way to navigate even when you want to give up. um, that's something that my family has taught me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There is a yeah, there is also a few I guess rage poems in the book, like "Stop raising him, he's not your son."
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite. And then there's also one about without apologizing.
Mm,
That's it. Yeah, without over apologizing.
without
That's
over
a good one as well.
apologizing.
Huh?
Yeah. Which one do you want me to read?
Let's see. Stop raising him, he's not your son.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Stop raising him. He's not your son. The problem with men losing themselves in my eyes is they'll never find what they're looking for. They'll call me angelic until I act foolish, then bash me for sending mixed signals. They'll call me talented until I cannot juggle anymore, then reject me for deceiving them. How dare I know myself better than they know the tears that come from their eyes? What they're searching for, they lost a long time ago, and I cannot be their childhood toy or their scratched up CD or their favorite blanket. I almost wish I had a sign that said, "Keep your melancholy to yourself." If their eyes wanted to dance with my soul so badly, they would need to learn a whole new rhythm. And how can I trust someone who doesn't know the beat of their own wound? Half man, half pixels that come in and out of focus with a hunger I cannot fill. There's no other way to put this gently. In no language will this sound sweet. Yeah.
All right. So let's say, shall we take a 5 or 10 minute break in case anybody wants to use the restroom, and then when we come back, I think we'll have your maybe your family explain some of the stuff,
Oh,
and then we can you can just do like a reading where you just read and
okay.
just a poem from each of the four sections
Yeah.
there, so that people can have a sense of the order of the book: the root, the
Right.
chord, the heart, and the head.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Thank
and
you.
then meanwhile, while you wait, you can use the restroom, drink water, or come and purchase the book. You can purchase it afterwards as well. Like,
Yeah. Thank
yeah.
you.
with the author of The Most Spectacular Mistake. It's a debut poetry collection by Anatalia Vallez. And yeah, it's a book of poems, but there's even a play. There's also a monologue, and it's also in three languages. So English, Spanish, and an indigenous language, Nahua, right? And yeah, we're back from the break. We were just asking her about her journey. We read some poems from the book, and in fact, just for today, her family was really inspired by one of the poems in the book that they made a self care package uh,
Yeah.
for just for this event that you can also purchase in addition to the book. So we talked about that. Yeah.
Yes. So all the products here are, it's a $20 deal, and it's directly the book, the poem that I read earlier talks about a coffee scrub and the tea, like put the
Uh,
lemons out with pomegranate and
oh yeah.
lemon juice. And so we've had these lovely products come together. The sticky notes that are transparent sticky notes that you can write affirmations in and stick like
Mm,
anywhere, like on your mirror and things like that. It's very aesthetic, it's really cute. And you can write whatever you want, obviously whatever feels good for you. Maybe a quote from the book, maybe a quote that you really love. They're really good actually for like bookmarks. So if you're reading like a book or something and you want to like notate something without ruining like the pages, that's really good for it. And then a lip scrub, which has that apricot in it. So the, the coffee body scrub is 10. Um, the tea bag is 5, and then the lip scrub is 7, and then together it's 20. And that you get the whole package, and then um, you get to do that little ritual for yourself in whatever way feels right for you. um, Recognizing that self-care is really important. And yeah, and you get to support local authors and
mm,
local artisans. And then the brand, we're calling it, is Las Mil Maravillas, which is 1,000 marvels. Or maravillas is also like a plant, like a flower. So yeah, that's
mm,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, are there any writers or authors or artists in the audience itself? Uh, Anyone? Me? All right. So I'm asking because I'm just curious. Do you ever experience what they call so-called writer's block or creative blocks, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think well, we talked about this the other day,
Hmm.
at Talk to Me Tuesday in Santana.
Yeah.
Also a really fantastic event in the evenings.
Yeah, you should come. It's every Tuesday at 7 p.m. at 4th Street Market in Santa Ana. It's called Talk to Me Tuesdays. It's like a community conversations, discussions where we get to come together as a community and talk about our weekend or talk about things that we normally couldn't talk about on social media, where we could actually get to hang out as a community. And then we also invite featured artists like Anatalia uh, or other artists as well. So there's also musical and poetry entertainment along with community conversations. So, so yeah, so come to Talk to Me Tuesdays as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about well, I introduced the idea of like the spirit and the ego, and
Mm-hmm.
that like the spirit is here to like teach us lessons about life, because that's what we came here to do, I think, as humans. And then the ego kind of trips out a little bit or wants to do things a certain way. And it's good to have like a healthy ego, like a
Mm-hmm.
balanced ego, right? You need to have a little bit of an ego to be able to like put your work out there as an
Mm-hmm.
artist, right? You need to be able to like at least have confidence, or like feel good about the work that you're putting out there. And that way, I think, is like a healthy, balanced ego. I think that writer's block, it comes from like the blocked kind of imagination,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes from Like I need to produce in order to be of value as an artist or
Mhm.
as a creative. Like I need to create something in order to call myself an artist.
Mhm.
And I think that like uh, I think we're all creative beings. You
Mhm.
know, especially I grew up in an immigrant household. We were always getting creative about something. You know, how we got to had how we got somewhere, how we did things, how we did like student projects that I had to do. Like we always had to like find creative solutions to things. And so I in that way I do feel I'm working on more poetry. And there is a poem that I titled Scraps,
Mhm.
and it talks about all the things that we think are not writing but are actually part of the writing
Mhm.
process. um, that if we like leave that alone a little bit, we can come back to it a little bit better.
Mhm.
um and then it sometimes that creative stuff is for you.
Mhm.
And if you really want to get into the writing process, like the you when you think you're done writing is like actually the start.
Mhm.
Sometimes you write for I've done this, I've written for like hours, and then I'm like, oh, this is what I was trying to say the whole time, and it's just one sentence or one phrase.
Mhm.
But it's the journey that gets you there, that I'm like, oh, this is all the labor that went to this one line.
Mhm.
I know you have another perspective on writer's block too.
Right. Yeah. This is my perspective is based on the Graham Wallace model of the four stages of creativity, where there is preparation, incubation, then illumination, and then finally feedback and execution. And they're not necessarily in that order. They can kind of overlap, but usually the first two stages are in order. So you need the preparation first, and then uh, and then incubation. So I think that if we introduce what I call strategic delay into the writing process itself or any creative process, then you'll no longer have such a thing as writer's block, because it becomes part of your process, where the so-called block is really a delay, it's a pause on purpose, right? So I think that there are two ways in which a poem comes to me. For example, there are poems that the complete poem comes to me in 5 minutes, right? I say comes to me as if it's alive, because I kind of do feel like
Yeah.
my poems are alive and have their own consciousness. It's almost like an animist view of things. And so the only time when something comes to me that quickly is because I'm working on subject matter that already had a thought process of 10 to 15 years behind it, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I wrote a poem called Intertwined, and I wrote that poem basically in response to the famous poem Joy and Sorrow by Khalil Gibran, which I had been reading and rereading and thinking about for 15 years already. So that's why it came to me so quickly, right? But then there was another poem that took me 3 weeks to finish, because I was working on completely new subject matter, where I did the preparation, where I wrote down the different ideas I wanted and the main theme of it. Then I made a whole mind map, right, of the different ideas. And each in between each stage I would take breaks. I would do the incubation part, where incubation is when you're letting your mind rest so that your subconscious can work on the material, right? And then each time I would come back, I would to be able to complete the next stage, right? So after the mind map, I would put. Then I decided to make a list of topics I wanted to talk about. Then when I came back again, I would put those lists in order so it becomes like a story. And then by the final time I came back, that's when the whole poem came to me in 5 minutes, right? Because and by that time it had taken about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
And you also speak
The
about the
labor.
the butterfly metaphor that I love. Can you explain that again?
The butterfly metaphor. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, the
keep your butterflies. Yeah,
ideas. Yeah.
yeah. I prefer
uh
that to the more well-known "kill your darlings."
Oh no,
Yeah,
no, we don't kill our
yeah.
darlings. We don't kill our darlings. So Jose Cruz Gonzalez, who's a local, well, I don't know if he's local anymore, but he is a playwright, who has done a lot of fantastic work, renowned playwright at this point. He did a workshop with Breath of Fire, a couple years ago, many years ago actually, when I was starting to write Las Sirenas, and he had this idea of like catching butterflies as like these ideas that you have when you're cooking or you're running errands or something like that, and like an idea for something pops up, you write it down. As soon as you like think of it, you write it down, and then you put it in a box, and it's like collecting these butterflies. And so when you're ready to sit down and write, you've made your time, 10, 15 minutes, however long, and you take out this box, and now you have all these ideas, and
Mhm.
it's not just like sitting on with a blank canvas or a blank page, but you're actually coming with all these ideas, and you can like find something to work on.
Mhm.
And the kind of the metaphor that I use is that in the writing process and editing and putting this together, there are a lot of poems. I knew that I wanted to have that structure: roots, core, heart, head. And there were some poems that just weren't ready to be released out in the world.
Mhm.
But I think every poem that made it to the book, I was ready to release. So
Mhm.
it felt like releasing those butterflies. Like I was no longer attached to the poem in a way that felt like the bravery that comes with putting something like this out there that's so vulnerable is that it welcomes different interpretations and misinterpretations of your work.
Mhm.
And I had to let go of these poems in a
Mhm.
way and say they are no longer mine. They are for whoever gets to read them and interpret them, to take on, they take on the life of its own. And so it felt like releasing these
Mhm.
butterflies, um, out in the world, that no longer were just mine. They were for the world to hold space for and to identify with and grow with. And there were some that were not ready,
Mhm.
and I think that it's also important to not push yourself either as an
Mhm.
artist, to have boundaries and to have limits, to say, you know what, this isn't ready yet. um and that's where like other poems come in, right? Like a
Mhm.
sentence that I wrote many years ago can turn into, if I have it in my bank of, butterflies or whatever, that like I can go back to it and be like, oh, this is the poem that it was ready for.
Mhm.
Sometimes you just gotta live life a little bit
Mhm.
too, to
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
things.
And I like that because earlier you were talking about spirit versus ego, and the editing process can be very hard, especially for the ego that wants to be attached to the things we like,
Hmm.
that might not be fit for the poem, right? And that's parts you might need to let go of. But because, like you were saying, how you know sometimes you write a lot, but then you end up with just one sentence, right? But everything you've written doesn't have to be like completely gone. You can put it back, as butterflies in your butterfly box to be used in a different
Another
poem,
thing,
yeah,
yeah,
or even a
yeah,
play or whatever else,
right,
right? Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Cool. So let's wait for the plane to pass, and then I'll have you just read from each section, like a poem from each section of the book.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, it's divided into four parts. Um, so this is roots. This is
Oh
the
yeah, and then there are
little
pictures.
image
Yeah.
of roots.
And you were saying even those pictures is because you have a grandma who doesn't read or write, and you wanted her to have
The
something to
visual.
relate. Yeah,
The
the
visual.
visual, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Ruler in the mirror. I'm sitting on the edge of the bathtub, pretending to brush my hair, watching her look intently in the mirror. She takes out a comb and delicately parts her hair, raises a tweezer to her eyebrows while the curling iron heats up, sharpens a red lip liner, raises the music, hums as she powders her face, studying every pore and freckle, looks into the eyes of her father, the nose of her mother, takes the curler to her bangs and creates an arch. Shoulders back, powerful, in control, practicing the skills of a painter. Her face is her palette. Sweeps her hair into a perfectly symmetrical work of art, sprays hairspray to secure her crown, and departs. No matter how out of control life situations may be, she is the almighty ruler of herself, after all. She has fought hard to be in control of her body and mind. She kisses my forehead before she leaves to face the day I almost drop my brush. What an honor to be raised by someone who reclaims her divinity after being mutilated, and what a privilege to feel the ripple effects of self love.
Wow.
This is Core, which is a serpent. It's uncoiling. Okay.
Can you read the intro as well for
Do you want
each
me to read the
one?
intro? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So core, I have a definition for each one, so I'll read the noun. The dense central region of a planet, especially the nickel iron inner part of the Earth. The muscles of the torso, especially the lower back and abdominal area, which assist in the maintenance of good posture and balance. The part of everyone cares for aesthetics, not functionality. What you start using when you realize you don't need a microphone to be heard. I'll probably bleed at the border. Last time I wept, and those tears followed me, made me a stranger in my own body, pushing and pulling until I dissected the cemetery that had sprouted. A swelling scar, man made, groomed, occupied by military, invades natural habitats, deterring the flow of migration. As long as the border remains, I'll count the faces, not just the black bags traveling against the Pacific Ocean's waves. Which side is the other side again? Let's see where my blood stains.
Now in the title, you put border in capital and that's a TM.
Yeah.
What's that for?
The TM as in like trademark, as in the the ways in which, technology and militarization of the borders um, is like something that people can like financially gain from.
Oh,
So I don't really like explicitly go into that, but like the ways in which everything is managed,
it's
like the
objectified.
yeah, it's very, very, intense. Like,
Mhm.
oh, like schools even, that like
Mm,
look like and feel like jails, because like people are profiting off of the ways in
mhm.
which
Right,
we build things.
right, yeah.
So that's what that sign like
It even relates to how, for example, social media is free because we're the product, we're not the customer. That's why it's
yeah,
free. Like they're literally selling our
selling our
data
data.
to
Yeah,
the advertiser. The advertiser is the
right.
customer, which is why, by the way, there is no customer service for us. And if something happens, you can't call them.
Yeah.
Because we're not the customer, we're the product.
Ooh, that's core there. That gets into the nitty gritty. Um, so this is heart, and there's a heart there. Noun: a hollow muscular organ that pumps the blood through the circulatory system by rhythmic contraction and dilation. The part you are told to protect in theory, but theories are always tested. The organ humans blame for making thoughtless decisions. I'm gonna read La Sirena, which
Mm.
is what inspired the play. Um, Evening. Sierra has received her first package from Josephine, and in return must hold her end of the deal by trying to recall what she remembers from her last days as a human. I'll let this. I know I'm supposed to remember what happened, but I don't, okay? Tal vez I don't want them to know the truth of who he was. Ruben was just the shapeshifter. Underneath that hard exterior, there was a tortured soul with no real home. A man persecuted by humans, hunted by his own shadows, cornered by his own demise. He caught wave of how I moved, my gestures, my quirks, my rhythm, until we danced one night till the sun came up. Caray! I felt like we were twin flames. I learned to care for him so deeply. I didn't know that I could put all my energy and time into loving one person like that. He had me engrossed, envuelto en su dedo. I could not let him go. It was so invigorating because he meant so much to so many people. I felt indispensable to the movement in a way. Everything was for his love. But he did not look at me as his equal, as his compañera en la lucha. No, I was his prey. He was the cool vato who whispered sweet nothings to all the girls. Oh, he was good with his words. You should have met this valiente. He knew how to rile up la gente. He had this bravado that grew crowds everywhere we went. He always spoke about the dangers that laid out there, about the peligros and the lies and the thieves hidden within the system, so I never thought he was the one to look out for. One day, he told me he had something to tell me, so we went for a walk around campus. I asked him where we were, but he just grew real close to me. My heart was racing. He placed his fingers under my chin, caressed my face, and looked me deep in the eye. I didn't even notice when he began to smother me until I was gasping for air. Instincts kicked in and I scratched him. Dug my fingers deep into his face. I went for his eye, but he slapped my hand away. That's when I fell to the ground and hit my head. I could see blood in my reflection, but I didn't know where it had come from. I tried to drag myself away from him, looked up only to see no trace of pity or remorse. I screamed so loud, but even with the echo in this chamber, no one could hear me outside. I yelled anyways and cried, Auxilio! He hit me with his foot, and before I could react, I was in the chlorinated water. I didn't know how to swim. He knew that. As I tried to hold on to the edge of the pool, he told me, You're worthless. I yelled at him, Even to you? I gave you everything, and still I mean nothing to you. He responded with one last shove with what felt like all of his strength. And I sank, and I disintegrated into tiny bits at the bottom of this pool, taking up as little space as possible, even after death. But some pieces of me survived. It took a while, but I'm here again. And you're the first person to see me like this.
Hmm. Wow, that's intense.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's it's intense, but it's
Toxic charming man.
you know, it's a legend. It's another, I
Mhm.
think, another way of looking at like
Mhm.
the stories that are untold that are out there. I think
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Have you thought about making an audiobook? Because
I You know what? I think that's something that I need to work on
yeah,
on top
yeah,
of all the other stuff I got work going
yeah,
on. I think that would be really
yeah.
cool.
Because you're pretty good at reading your own work. Although some people hire narrators as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
hire myself. I'm hired. um okay. So the next one, I know those. It's a intense poem. So or monologue. Head. The compact mass of leaves or flowers at the top of a stem, the upper part of the human body, the part ancestors wrote about to signify the spirit. What you are told to protect in an earthquake, because no one deserves to hold any more trauma. Let's see. To this body, I used to hide behind my mother's smile, her pain like a boulder I pushed, her stories extending out of my fingertips. I used to think my mother's face was mine. My heart lived in her heart, just until I found a better place. Some people call this empathy. I call it time travel. Be careful, my bruja friend told me once. So, if I may, I would like to address her with the tenderness she's always wanted. Para mi cuerpo, to this body. You have survived both physical and emotional brutality, stretched and shrunk, but refused to be taken for granted. With every ache and sore, you cry out, "Love me." I'm listening. I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm tuning in.
That is
And that's,
that's powerful. So there's another poem that I like in this section. My grandma knows a song.
yeah. I'll read it in Spanish and then in English. It's also from the last part. Mi abuela se sabe una canción. Atiende su jardín como conductora de sinfónica. Nota quién anda desafinado, quién no anda de buenas esta mañana. Les corrige y despierta hasta que listos practican una canción. ¿Cómo una viejita sin estudio puede crear tan bellas melodías? Preguntan los vecinos. No entienden que cuando alguien crece entre el frijol y el elote, se aprende un canto muy distinto al de la ciudad, que hasta guitarristas profesionales no lo pueden interpretar. My grandma knows a song, treats her garden like a symphony conductor, notes who is out of tune, who is not in a good mood this morning, corrects and straightens out until together they practice a song. How can an old lady with no formal education create such beautiful melodies? The neighbors ask. They don't understand. When someone grows amongst the bean and the corn, they learn a song so different than the city folks. Even professional musicians cannot interpret.
Oh, cool. Love that. Yep. Okay, let's see. There's two more I would like you to read, and
Okay.
then maybe we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Because I didn't want her to die, and then call it joy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He's getting Kundan is getting all his requests met. Okay. Okay. I didn't want her to die. I kept watering her, even after you disappointed me. Even after strangers smelled grief on my clothes, I laughed it off. Oh, how I exercised this muscle called my face. I took the last petal home with me, placed it between two pages of an old journal, hoping maybe she would grow again if she was reminded she'd survive this too. We all knew her sentence, yet that naive sense in me pinned my mouth to the floor. No more. In the distance, a person screaming, I felt nothing but the dry heat of an overstimulated engine. Fragile, delicate, paper thin spine, once she was all skeleton. When she needed her rotten roots cut off, I did it. To remind her there is life after. Ya no conspires ni suspires, solamente respira corazón. Stop conspiring and holding your breath for others. Just breathe, cariño. That's all you have to do. And then call it joy
Yeah,
or
then there's
for
also
folks
for folks that
for
are
folks that
soft.
are soft.
Yeah.
Okay. For folks that are soft, balance your body with song. Push in to let out sound and release the shame that invaded your home. Walk away. Let them whisper. They will always have critiques and you will always have substance. Once you stop listening to the static, the message will come. You have everything when you recognize your power. Drop the baggage you've held for others. Put the lesson on a patch, sew it onto your sleeve, and keep going. Despite the world and all it demands of you, stay soft, tender to the touch. Appreciate cuddles and lavender ice cream. Dance barefoot and sunbathe in the nude. Make potions to clean and brew intentions. Invite hummingbirds to break bread.
Is there any questions from the audience? No questions. Well, then thank you for thank you everybody for coming. I
Thank
guess
you.
that's a wrap. And thank you, Anatalia. You can purchase the book at the front desk at the bookstore. You can purchase directly from her as well and pay her Venmo as well. And yeah, there will be more copies at the bookstore as well for purchase. And and then what's next for you? Like,
uh I don't know. I don't know what's next for me. I want to. I'm working on another collection.
Mhm.
That I think I'm gonna take my time with that though because I have a lot of ideas. I want to continue working on my play, expand that a little bit more. So the play that I wrote is based around the monologue Las Sirenas. So I want to work on that a little bit more and see where that can go. Perhaps reach more people and yeah, I mean maybe tour. I don't know. I don't know
Mm,
what's next. I think like I've only been to Texas once, which is where this book was published. So
mm,
it would be great to like go to different states or go to different communities and
mm,
share the book,
yeah,
um, because you know it's always the first time for someone for a new reader. So
right.
yeah, just put my work out there a little bit
Mm,
more. Um, yeah,
right. And you just graduated from your MFA, right?
I'm going to I'm going to graduate. So I
Soon,
think
right?
that's yeah soon.
So you have a little bit more time after that.
Yeah, I hope to. Yeah, I have to have a little bit more time.
Nice, nice. Yeah. And then where can people find you?
I'm at Anatalia Vallez on Twitter. My Instagram talking about no customer service. I can't log into my personal Instagram, but I do have a page called Homies Who Submit. That's for like writers, artists, and things like that to submit their work
Mhm.
on Instagram. I guess you can find me on Facebook. I have a
Right.
YouTube channel. I have a Substack. It's just
And Patreon,
anatalia.substack.com. Patreon.
and also
Um,
your website, right?
yeah. So I try to do like a monthly newsletter to
Hmm.
sort of like recap the
Right.
things that I've been up to. And it's just like a blog to kind of
Right.
share.
Yeah. And it's all under your name, right?
Yeah.
Anatalia Bias.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can find her in there as well if you want to keep updated on more of her work, her plays, her books, maybe her songs and album.
We'll see. We'll see. Then you're putting a lot more on the table for me. But I love it. I
So
love it.
yeah,
You know.
cool. Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, she's available for book signings and stuff. You want to
Yeah,
get the book, and yeah, thanks.
we have self care things here as
Well,
well.
yeah, so the self care things too.